The greatest scary mysteries of all time are those unsolved mysteries in which the criminal motive remains one of the biggest questions in the case. Such unsolved true crime stories are chilling because there's no way to tell what kind of precautions can be taken to prevent these dark and disturbing events from repeating for a second terrifying time. Number 5. What truly happened to David Box in 1984 is one of the all-time scariest mysteries within the true crime community to date. Dave was a 39-year-old pipe fitter who had been working at the Feeds Material Production Center in Ohio for 3 years on the overnight shift. On June 19th, David carpooled with his coworker Harry Easterling. Hours into his shift, at about 4 a.m., a coworker remembers Dave talking with his supervisor, Charles Schaus, in a car in the parking lot with the windows rolled up, despite warm and muggy weather. Later, Charles, Dave, and Harry were eating in the break room. Charles said Dave was distant as he clocked back into work at 4:46 a.m. If the story Charles later gave to criminal investigators is true, then the two had a short 10-minute discussion to see if Dave would discuss any events that were visibly bothering him. 5 minutes later at 5 a.m., the night would have an unexpected ending, culminating in the darkest final moments of Dave's life. 2 hours later, there was a safety meeting, which Dave was mysteriously absent from despite mandatory attendance. Afterwards, Harry waited around for a couple of hours, but he eventually went home after leaving a note for Dave, whose disappearance he could not explain at the time. Before their next shift, Harry went to the restaurant where they usually met before carpooling to work. He found Dave's car was already there, but that the engine was cold, as if it hadn't been touched for hours, and was parked there from the night before. It was only then that he realized Dave was really a missing person who hadn't been seen since yesterday. Meanwhile, at the factory, a furnace operator in Building 6 had noticed something strange about the furnace temperatures and reported it to his supervisor. The investigators found a dip in temperature had been logged early that morning, and this usually indicates that something was dropped inside. The supervisor should have shut down the operations and searched the furnace to make sure no foreign objects were inside. But instead, it was crime investigators who checked through the safety logs and followed up on this clue. The supervisor did not properly respond to the incident, which is very against protocols. Now that Dave was reported as a missing person, they realized that he had been dropped inside, either forcibly or by his own will. The reason why the supervisor did not check the furnace, despite the recorded temperature changes being reported to him, could have been because the plant would have to be shut down and left to cool for 3 days before the radioactive sludge could be checked. As some crime scene investigators searched through the smoldering chemical waste, they recovered keys which fit into Dave's toolbox, parts of a walkie-talkie, 3 strange loops of wire, and bones. Harry remembered seeing the keys at 7 a.m. after Dave had disappeared. Before he went to a meeting, Dave placed his keys and padlock on top of his toolbox. Before he went missing, Dave also was last seen alive, walking towards this building, which was not the same building he had been assigned to work on that night. Police concluded Dave had ended up in the furnace, though how was another matter. It would have been impossible for him to have accidentally fallen through the small opening, and it would have taken some effort for him to have crawled in. Dave's boss claimed he was depressed, but Dave's family suspect foul play. This mystery has not been solved, but theories abound. It later emerged that the plant had been releasing huge amounts of toxic radiation into the surrounding area. Instead of producing animal food like they claimed, the plant was actually part of a secret radioactive chemical production factory. It has been suggested that Dave might have been preparing to blow the whistle on this revelation, and he was taken out to keep the scandal from breaking. However, police found no evidence of foul play, and what remained of Dave Box wasn't enough to answer this scary mystery. Number 4. Home to about 150 people, Gineto di Caronia was already a very small village before a scary mystery would reduce the population even further. Between 2004 and 2005, families left their homes during the darkest moments of their lives, leaving the Sicily village little more than a ghost town by the end of this disturbing story that cannot be explained according to some. Antonio Pezzino lived with his wife and teenage son in a home that he built with his father. On December 23rd, the TV burst into flames in a strange phenomenon that soon spread to other houses. Electrical equipment, sometimes not even turned on or plugged in, would combust. Faulty wiring, or even the village's electrical grid was suspected. It was only when Pezzino got the attention of the mayor that an investigation officially began. During this time, the scary mystery worsened for months. In February, 2 more real-life horror stories would unfold as a pair of houses were burned down. The residents evacuated to a hotel. Desperate to keep any new cases from happening while they worked on getting this mystery solved, workers cut off all power to the village. Investigators could not find an explanation as they checked the city's infrastructure from top to bottom. They were surprised to find the outside of the wires were more damaged than the inside, which doesn't make sense with traditional electrical fires. Power has returned to the city, and even though the mystery was not solved, there were no new cases for almost a full decade. In 2014, the horror stories began anew, but this time there was a clear explanation behind the frightful mystery. Secret cameras caught Pezzino's son acting suspicious around areas that would moments later spontaneously combust. He was arrested and charged for arson and criminal conspiracy to commit fraud. However, if the story that residents would tell crime investigators is true, then the boy was not responsible for these acts. According to some stories, there were truly unexplained instances in which objects would combust before their eyes, with nobody else around, and they don't believe his son was to blame for the scary mystery. Number 3. On New Year's Day, 1963, boys searching for golf balls near the Lane Cove River in Sydney discovered the body of a man in the grass. Crime investigators soon found the body of a woman as well. It was the beginning of one of the greatest unsolved scary mysteries in all of Australian history. This area was known as Lover's Lane, and it seemed like the couple had been really busy living up to the area's name when someone or something quickly took their lives. The man had his suit jacket covering the top half of his body, and the woman was barely covered up in a piece of cardboard. They were later identified as Dr. Gilbert Bogle and Mrs. Margaret Chandler. With no marks to speak of, criminal investigators suspected they may have succumbed to the administration of an unknown and fast-acting chemical agent. Based on the positioning of their bodies, they had been covered up by somebody else after they had expired, a third mystery person. Gilbert and Margaret, both scientists, had met at a barbecue a few weeks earlier and had spent New Year's Eve together at a party nearby. Gilbert worked with Margaret's husband at the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. He specialized in special science experiments with laser programs and would soon be taking his highly specialized work to the USA. When police investigators realized the couple were not really married to one another, the first criminal suspect was Margaret's husband, Jeffrey. To their surprise, police detectives learned that Jeffrey was well aware of his wife's interest in his coworker and had actually encouraged them to act on their impulses. He had also been at the same New Year's Eve party on the night of their strange demise, but he had left early to spend time with a girlfriend of his own. Obviously, jealousy from Jeffrey was not a criminal motive in this unsolved case. Other criminal suspects in the case included the jilted husband of another one of Gilbert's lovers, who apparently wasn't as open to an open relationship as Jeffrey. But there wasn't enough evidence linking him to the crime to prove that he was the person responsible. Gilbert's job as a scientist in the Cold War led to rumors that his work might have been the cause of his untimely passing. Gilbert claimed to have no interest in nuclear physics, but it's possible that he might have been working on some top-secret project, a weird science experiment that he would not have been allowed to complete. Other suggestions include a swamp gas bubble made of hydrogen sulfide, which rose to the surface and settled in the ditch the lovers were found in. But if this were the case, then that doesn't explain how the couple failed to smell the swamp gas and escape, nor does it explain who covered their bodies afterwards. The strangest and scariest thing about this unsolved mystery is the chemical analysis of the couple. No toxic compounds were ever identified in their system, and no DNA evidence remains available for modern testing. Whether it was from a natural occurrence or something much more sinister, this scary mystery is one that lots of people would like to be solved. Number 2. As their dark and disturbing crime story goes, Wilhelm and Inger Jacobsen were described as a well-respected middle-class couple in Fredericksburg. The couple were discovered by a maid on the morning of February 20th. Inger in her bedroom, fully dressed and in fact wearing 2 pairs of undergarments. There was a pillow beneath her head and a duvet draped partially over her body, and an old cane that had once belonged to her mother. Wilhelm's body was found in the gentleman's room, a room near the entrance of the house that anybody entering would have to go past on the way to the bedroom. He also had a pillow under his head. Beneath the pillow was a bouquet of tulips. Rolled up stockings were in his mouth, and a chair had been placed over his body. Lying beside it was a cane that had belonged to Inger's father. A lamp found near Wilhelm's body appeared to be the weapon. Investigators were further baffled to find objects in the apartment had been moved around, including ornaments being shifted out of place, wine bottles moving, and a collection of small items arranged on a radiator shelf. Only a small amount of money had been stolen, along with 2 checks that were never cashed. Neighbors were able to give police a true indication of when the crime occurred. A downstairs neighbor said she had heard banging between 4 and 5 p.m. the day before the bodies were found. At around 11:30, she heard heavy, dragging footsteps and the sound of running water until 12:30 a.m. when she fell asleep. The crime was never truly solved, and some have speculated Wilhelm might have gotten involved in the affairs of notorious gangsters, as there was a significant black market in Denmark at the time. Wilhelm had been part of a committee in charge of distributing clothes to the needy after World War II, and he allegedly became involved in black market trade afterwards, which could have attracted the attention of organized crime families. Wilhelm's interest in gambling and the possibility that he might have been a spy working either for German occupiers or for some resistance during the war have also been suggested as possible motives. A lack of evidence in this scary mystery means there are countless theories, each more dark and disturbing than the next, and it's unlikely the case will ever be solved. Number 1. In 1985, 12 lives in Japan were lost to the vending machine killer. It was April of that year when a 45-year-old truck driver became the first victim in this scary mystery. He was working in Fukuyama, Hiroshima, and stopped to purchase a drink from one of the hundreds of vending machines that dotted the streets. He found a bottle lying on top of the machine. In Japan, strangers would often buy 2 drinks at a vending machine and leave one for the next person as good karma. So when this unnamed truck driver spotted the abandoned truck, he didn't find it suspicious to drink. He quickly fell ill and would pass away in the hospital on May 2nd. Forensic investigators found an herbicide called paraquat in his system. At the time, nobody connected this to the free drink the victim had consumed. By the end of the year, his family would realize he was the first victim of the vending machine killer. Between September and October, the mystery grew all the more chilling, as 9 more people had lost their lives after consuming drinks in or around vending machines. Almost all were Orinamen-C, but some were Real Gold, a Coca-Cola company drink popular in Japan. At this point, the monster with 21 faces was still fresh in the memories of Japanese citizens. This mysterious group had terrorized the country by claiming to sabotage the food products of 2 popular companies. In this case, the police superintendent took his own life in August of 1985, and the organization sent a letter claiming that they would be stopping now. They also warned that many more people would copy them, and if anybody blackmailed food companies from that point on, it would be a copycat. But in this scary mystery, there was no blackmail. The criminal behind the vending machine poisonings didn't warn anybody about the danger. and didn't write any letters claiming responsibility. In November, 2 more people lost their lives due to this creepy criminal, before action was finally taken. Warnings were posted at vending machines telling customers not to take anything that had been left behind. Oranamen bottles were also changed from a screw top to a pull tab. After these precautions, the real-life horror stories ceased as suddenly as they had begun. Police were left with no evidence or leads that could solve the mystery of who did this or why. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.